Hey, what are you doing to get your garden ready for the fall and winter? Today we share essential fall gardening tips courtesy of the Sacramento County Master Gardeners. We discuss enriching soil with fallen leaves, composting techniques, and managing fruit trees, including pruning and irrigation adjustments. Also, Debbie Flower, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, offers a primer on correct watering techniques. Today it's episode 410, Fall Gardening Tips and How to Water. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. Let's go. We're here at a September workday at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center getting tips about fall gardening. Every gardener has a fall garden tip of one thing or another. And one of my favorites, of course, has to do with, okay, what do you do with your garden when you're done? What do you do with that bed of soil? We're talking with Jeff Capellas. He's a master gardener with Sacramento County. And Jeff, what is your solution for helping that soil out during the dormant time of the year?
Well, Fred, one of the easiest things to do is just leave the leaves. We follow nature, right? We just let the leaves decompose, refeed the soil biology and the organisms down there, and provide habitat for overwintering beneficials.
And if you have raised beds, you can move them on top of the raised beds, too. One thing I like to do is after raking up oak leaves is put them in a metal trash can and then weed whack them into smaller pieces, or use a mulching mower to chop them into finer pieces in order that they break down a little quicker and help feed the soil. And it does a whole host of good because, frankly, it's a mulch.
Exactly. What I use is it's kind of like a garden vacuum that has a bag on it. It's like a mulching vacuum, and it will cut up those leaves into various small pieces. I also store them in a metal container over the course of the year, and then use that to feed my compost bins during the spring and summer months.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of great containers for mulch like that. I use a Smart Pot 100-gallon compost bag where I store my excess leaves over the summer. And you just treat it like you would a compost bag and basically, keep it somewhat moist and then use the leaves as you need them. Or you can use the compost that's forming at the bottom of that bag.
Exactly. I've noticed that as I go further on into the season, those leaves are chipped down, and they're just ready to put out on the surface of the soil. And
one other great benefit, too, of on your garden bed of stacking it with 6 to 8 inches of leaves is we are going to get rainstorms eventually, and they can be rather fierce at times. And the force of rain actually compacts the soil if there isn't anything there to buffer those raindrops. And those leaves make a great buffer because as the rain hits those leaves, it slows down the progress of the water, and it drips and it waters the soil that way without compacting the soil.
Absolutely. It also helps to suppress weeds because those same rainstorms that come through are going to start activating those weed seeds that have been dormant in your soil and gathering all spring and summer long. If you put a thick layer of leaf mulch over that, those seeds are not going to get the sunlight that will help them to germinate come spring.
And you're also creating a winter home for beneficials.
Absolutely. There are a number of moths and butterflies whose cocoons actually overwinter in the duff, in that leaf mulch, that leaf litter during the winter, and a whole host of other beneficials as well.
Yes, the microbiology of the soil vastly improves when you got that layer of leaves on top of the garden bed, and the worms love it too.
I think I've heard that from a very wise Master Gardener's podcast over the years.
We like worms, yes. All right, yeah. So if you're going to do anything in the fall, well, protect your soil with some ground up leaves or just leaves if they're small enough, and you can make it 6 inches, 8 inches thick, and you're going to be helping out your soil to have a great next year.
Absolutely. Leave the leaves. That's the best tip I can give.
I've heard that before, yeah. Jeff Capellas, Master Gardener, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Fred.
Fall gardens, do you have a tip? I know a lot of master gardeners who have some great fall garden tips. We are talking with Sacramento County Master Gardener Quentin Young here at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center on a September workday. Fall will be upon us soon. And Quentin, you usually show up and work around the orchard area. What are some good fall garden tips for people growing fruit trees?
So this time of year, we're starting to look at irrigation. We're getting ready to turn things down now that we've harvested most of our fruit. And because we do a lot of summer pruning, we're going to start looking at trees to see which ones can we prune in September. And ideally, we're not going to do any more pruning no later, at the very latest, in October.
There are certain diseases that affect certain fruit trees. Cherries and apricots come to mind, where you want to be pruning in August at the very latest in order to stave off any rain-borne diseases.
Exactly, yeah. So you don't want to promote things like Eutypa dieback. But yeah, September usually is about the latest we'll prune most of our deciduous fruit trees. For our citrus trees, we can prune and shape them year-round. What we're going to be looking at for winter is to sort of prune up those lower branches because we don't want those winter rains splashing bacteria and fungus up into the leaves.
And another great reason for what is called skirting your fruit trees, removing any of the branches that are close to the ground, is destroy that freeway for the rats.
Exactly. Rats, to a lesser degree, squirrels. But yeah, you just don't want that soil splashing up into the canopy.
Right. Now, I know Martha Stewart will disagree with us, but then, all gardening is local. And she talked about in a recent article about don't prune your fruit trees this time of year because they'll be damaged by frost in the fall. And it turns out the article was written by a gardener in Wisconsin and yeah, that's right. You wouldn't do that in Wisconsin. But if you're in USDA Zone 9 or Zone 8 or even parts of Zone 7, you could probably get away with extending that pruning season if you had to.
You definitely could. And with citrus, we're really lucky here because we can grow it year round. But you can see on our citrus, we have some water sprouts. So we're definitely going to prune those out now. And we shape them throughout the year.
This is where those thorn-proof sleeves come in handy if you're trying to work your way into the middle of a citrus tree to get that water spout, which could be emanating from the base, from below the graft union. And you want to avoid thorns while you're on that journey.
That's true. And then don't forget, too, with your container citrus, today we're actually feeding all of our container citrus. We're also feeding all of our avocados. This is going to be the last feeding for the year, and we're going to be expecting that feed to help with fruit and flower production next spring.
So, yeah, this would be then the time for the last feeding because as the soil temperature drops, as the days get shorter, it can't use that fertilizer, so you'd just be wasting it. When would you resume fertilization?
So believe it or not, with my container citrus, I probably will stop maybe in November, and I'll start again in February.
Yeah, there is always a danger of frost killing off new growth, but depending upon your zone and your risk and your microclimate, you might be okay.
Yeah, definitely. My citrus, I haven't really covered them the last couple of years. So overall, they're doing really great over the winter.
A lot of area gardeners want to know how you're having success with avocado trees.
They're just doing really well. They're new ones. They've only been in the ground for a year. So I'm hoping to see some flowers next year, but it's probably going to take a couple of years before we get some flower and fruit production. But we do have a bacon avocado on one of our avocados that's in the tropical hut.
It could take, 5 to 7 years to get full production on it?
Easy, yeah. A good 5 to 7 years. You got to be patient.
So there are some more cold-hardy avocados worth planting. You mentioned the bacon. Zutano comes to mind.
A lot of the Mexican ones, Zutano, Fuerte, Mexicola Grande. The bacon is a Mexican hybrid, and so is Haas, and we have both of those.
People may be a little surprised at the taste of some of those. They're not what you'd find in a grocery store.
Depending on where you find them, if you find them in a local farmer's market, what I like about the Mexicola Grande is you can actually eat the skin. It's a really thin-skinned one, but definitely try. I tried a Guatemalan avocado the other week, and I did not like the flavor at all. So it's very subjective. So if you can find a named variety at your grocery store or farmer's market, try it and see what you think.
Commercially here in California, the Haas has reigned supreme for decades. Is that recommended for here?
Yeah, it does really well here. Like I said, it's a Mexican hybrid. And my understanding is a lot of commercial growers, when they are trialing new strains, will grow Haas side by side. Because if the Haas produces and the new strains don't, then they think it might be a strain issue and not an environmental issue.
While I was walking through the orchard, I noticed an unusual citrus variety, or maybe it's not a citrus variety, the Australian finger lime.
The finger lime, and that's the only true tropical citrus. All the other ones are subtropical, but that is an unusual one. It's a really pretty landscaping tree. It's got those kind of delicate, kind of feathery leaves, but it's a really unusual citrus for sure.
And you use it for a garnish?
You can use it for a garnish. My mom actually just eats them whole like you would a kumquat, but they are kind of sour, like a lime.
All right, so we're changing seasons here as we go into fall. The tasks change. And, of course, mulch.
Yeah, it's mulch, and start thinking about if you're going to be getting new fruit trees, think about where you're going to put them. Think about where you're going to dig that hole, because before you know it, bare root fruit trees are going to be in the stores.
That's right, and give them plenty of room.
Give them room and just make sure you have a place to put them.
There we go. Quentin Young, Master Gardener. Thanks for the great fall garden tips.
Thanks, Fred.
Coming up on Saturday, October 4th, I'm going to be riding my bike. Well, what's so unusual about that, you might be asking yourself? Well, October 4th is the date of the Sacramento Century Challenge. That's a 100-mile bicycling event that goes along the Sacramento River. It starts in downtown Sacramento and heads south through the Delta farmland region and loops back. And yes, 100 miles is part of the challenge. Also part of the challenge is myself. I'm 74 years old, for heaven's sakes. And no, I will not be riding an electric bike. I have plenty of acoustic bikes to choose from. Adding to the challenge will be the route itself. It's infamous for pothole-filled river levee roads, as well as ferocious northerly headwinds that are usually in your face while you're pedaling on the way back. Now, I'm doing this for a very good cause. I'm helping out the Sacramento Rotary Club raise money for the Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery. The Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery is the only program of its kind here in Sacramento County. It directly prevents child abuse and neglect by supporting families with small children at times of crisis. The nursery allows parents to bring their children, ages newborn to 5, for emergency hourly or overnight care and protection during difficult times at home. Their goal is to keep families together and reduce the number of children entering foster care. We're calling this Farmer Fred's Ride for the Kids, and we'll have a link in today's show notes with more information on how you can donate to help out the Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery and urge me onward. So how about it? Maybe you could pledge 10 cents a mile. That would be $10, along with a hearty, "You go, Fred," or maybe a more generous $1 a mile. That's $100 to help give me the mental endurance for this all-day ride. And at my age, I'll have you know, I will take my time, thank you, and enjoy the farmland scenery, and of course try to stay upright on the bike. Again, please support Farmer Fred's Ride for the Kids. Look for the link in today's show notes or at gardenbasics.net. Your support will help provide a safe place for local small children in need. Thank you for your support. Let's go. If for some reason you ever got a job at a nursery, one of the first things they will teach you, and they will spend a lot of time, if it's a good nursery, teaching you how to water the plants. So let's talk to somebody who's worked at a nursery and has actually taught people, too. It must be Debbie Flower, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor. How to water your garden.
Yeah.
We're talking new plantings of seeds or young plants in containers. We're talking sprinklers versus drip, or container watering or in bed watering.
Did you set up the guest room? Because this is a big topic. I'm going to be here a while.
All right, I know. Yes. I think if we just cover the hazardous materials part, and I will start with the seeds. As far as you want to keep a seedbed evenly moist, the directions will tell you that anytime you plant seeds.
Yes.
Is keep the seedbed evenly moist. Well, how the heck do you do that if it's a little seed and it's only maybe a 1/4 inch deep?
Pretty foolproof way is to water from the bottom. Put the plants in a container. I've gotten those aluminum roasting pans at the inexpensive store.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the little containers, 6-packs, or this year I'm using some peat pellets in that container and put the water in the bottom of the container and let it be absorbed. Come back later hour or two later to see if there's still water in it. I want to dump it out. If they've used up the water, I'll add a little more and see if they absorb that. So I want the entire depth of the media to be moist, but I don't want them sitting in water. I have drowned seeds by having them sit in water.
You started them in peat pots.
I did.
Tell me about that.
Well, those are the ones I drowned because I went out of town and I started zinnias and desert wildflower, I think, in peat pots because they don't like to be transplanted. They survive it, but they suffer a little bit. So I thought, well, I'll give this a try. First of all, finding reasonably priced peat pots was difficult.
Really?
Yes. Most of them are now infused with mycorrhiza of some sort, and I don't want to pay for that, and I don't need that. My seeds are going to do just fine germinating without all that stuff. And they come in different sizes. It's another thing to be aware of. You can get very small ones. You can get bigger ones.
Well, you said you started them in peat pellets.
Peat pellets, yes.
Yeah. Tell us the difference between a peat pellet and a peat pot.
Right. Sorry about that. A peat pot is a pot shaped like, they're usually round, shaped like a little plastic pot, same size, but it's compressed peat moss. And they're the kind of pot that sometimes you can buy your plants in them. And if you do, they'll say you can plant the pot and everything with it. I would never do that, at least not without totally slicing down the sides in maybe 6 places and several X's across the bottom, because the compressed peat moss causes water problems around the roots of the plants when you put it in the ground. So I would slice it up as much as possible if I couldn't get the plant out and just plant it without the peat pot. They also come as coir. You can get coir pots. You can get cow poop pots. There are a lot of organic pots. They're all pretty much the same in terms of what you do when you plant them. We tried the coir pots at school for plants we sold at our plant sale, and I would always schedule about 9 weeks between the first seeds we would start growing, and those were usually in flats, to selling. And so they'd transplant over time as they needed to bigger pots and bigger pots. These were about 4-inch coir pots. They didn't make it. They couldn't stand up, physically stand up long enough to sell them. They would just keel over the pots themselves. Peat pots are a little more sturdy than coir pots. But I used peat pellets. Peat pellets are netting with a peat moss, I think it's just straight peat moss, in them, and they're dried and compressed. And so they look like a little wafer.
Okay, with a divot in the middle.
With a divot in the middle, right. The first things I ever planted from seed, I did into peat pellets. And I had a little tiny greenhouse that held 6 peat pellets.
That's a small greenhouse.
Quote unquote, yeah. It was a yellow base and then a clear top, rigid plastic. And up until about 6 months ago, I still had it. I've broke the top finally. This was like 60 years ago that I did this. And you put the pellets in a solid container bottom and put water in, and they will expand. They rise up. And then as they get hydrated, and then you plant the seeds in them. And that's what I used this year, was the peat pellets, to put things in that don't like to have their roots messed with.
I've never planted with peat pellets. As it expands, does it close at the top and enclose the seed that you put in that divot?
I did what I usually do, which is make my own little divot with a chopstick and put the seed in and cover it over with using my fingers. The divot is there. Sometimes it's on the sort of cattywampus because it didn't expand, or the divot wasn't in exactly the right spot.
But then with the idea, when you buy this peat pellet, it's got a smooth top and you're supposed to put a seed on top of it and then water it from the bottom?
You can water it from wherever you want, but you have to water it from the bottom to get hydrated first.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So you water it first before you plant the seed.
Yes, and it expands. Right. Then I plant the seed.
Okay.
I put these peat pellets in a container that didn't drain, and I put a dome, clear plastic dome over it, but that dome has air holes you can open. And I opened the top air hole and the sides because I wanted some airflow, and put it in the greenhouse. Well, the greenhouse has automatic overhead irrigation. I went on vacation for a week. I came back and they're floating because they got too wet. So I got 2 zinnias out of it.
How sad.
Yes, I have to replant.
Yes.
But, life is like this. And as a gardener, it's like, oh, now I know what I did wrong.
I just happened to get a package of 100 Zowie yellow flame zinnia seeds if you want some.
Zowie.
I really like it. It's really a nice seed.
Is it?
It's a nice plant. Yeah.
Sure, I'll take a few.
Okay.
I just got a cactus mix, 1 packet, and I have some left. So I'll try again. I'll just be later, and that's okay. So watering from the bottom is easy and not very stressful. When I plant seeds, like I did my tomatoes, I did some status. I decided I wanted some status, create flowers that you can dry very easily, and I wanted a bouquet in the house. The bouquet I had in the house of status was probably 20 years old.
That's a sturdy plant.
Yes, they're like good dried flowers. I just start in 6-packs, which I have washed, and put the media in, and the media is moist when it goes in. Create the hole for the seed, put the seed in, cover it over. Then I put a layer of vermiculite over the top. Not a thick layer, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Vermiculite helps hold moisture over the seed, and that's a critical thing. As you said, keep the seed bed moist after planting. I'll do it if I direct seed. I'll put it out, vermiculite, over the place where I planted the seed out in the field as well. Because of its structure, it's like an accordion. It's made from expanded mica. Mica is a rock. It's been heated, and it expands like an accordion, so it has all those ins and outs, and water gets trapped in there. It helps keep the soil moist so the seed will germinate.
I wonder if that's the primary ingredient in these packages I see that are labeled seed coating. It's like something that you would put on top of a seed that you had scattered, like grass seed or something like that.
Sometimes for like, if you buy one of those packets to fix a bare spot in your lawn, it's more like a mushed up newspaper.
Right. I've seen that too.
Yeah.
But this looks just like a seed starting mix, really.
Oh.
But I'm thinking, well, maybe it's primarily vermiculite, which it could be.
Well, that would work.
Okay.
And it disappears. It's shiny when you put it on, but over time it gets dirty, and it's a rock. It disappears into the soil.
So it protects the seed and hydrates the seed.
I wouldn't say it hydrates the seed as much as it slows down the loss of moisture from the soil, and it holds some moisture itself. And then I use a breaker on the end of my hose. I have a watering wand on the end of my hose, and then a breaker. And a breaker is, on a watering can, it's called a rose. And it's the thing that's on the end of the watering can. You can unscrew it, but it has a lot of holes in it. And a fine breaker has many holes. You can get them 300, 500, 1,000. Yes. Yeah. And I turn the water on fairly strongly, and I turn the breaker up in the air and stand back away from the plants and let the water come down as if it's a rainstorm.
So there's a long stem on this.
Yes, I have this wand,
yes,
this 3-foot wand.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be under the rain.
Yeah.
Some days that's okay, but usually not seed starting season.
So it is less force on that soil by turning that wand upside down and letting the water go up first and then come
theoretically, but that may not be true. I haven't done the physics calculations on it. The further the water falls, it may be harder, but that's what I do.
Okay, all right.
Other people probably do other things, but yes, you have to create a system that works for you that doesn't cause, and this I had to work with students on this over and over and over again, doesn't cause the seeds to come flying right out of the canal.
That's the whole idea. Yeah. Don't dislodge the seed when you water, so it has to be something gentle. I've mentioned this before. What I'm using is a dedicated 1-gallon sprayer with a spray nozzle on the end that produces a fine spray, and it's got like a 45-degree angle to it. And so basically, I just use it for water and for new seedlings. And I just easily coat the top of the little seed bed every day or so with that.
Right. That would work great for in the field, too, not just in containers.
Yeah. It does work. All right. So we've taken care of seeds as far as keeping them in place and yet keeping them hydrated. Plants in containers, young plants in containers especially. Again, that maybe the 6-pack you just bought of plants. I don't know how you water a 6-pack of plants with all the foliage that it might have. How the heck do you get the water into those little tiny
and that's containers? Where the training comes in.
Right.
That you learn how to correctly water a plant. I would show the students a video from Dramm. Dramm is a company that makes watering devices for industry as well as homeowners. And they have videos on the internet that you can watch. And there's one where the host is figuring out how much water is needed to be applied to 1 gallon. I guess it's perennials. I don't remember the plant. you need to water the entire column from top to bottom, whether it's a 6-pack or a 1 gallon or a 15 gallon. You need water to start at the top and wet the entire media. One point he makes is that you have to water each container. So the video's done in a greenhouse, and there are lots of plants on the ground in containers. You have to go each container. You don't just hold the hose over the top and swing it back and forth and hope everybody gets water. Like you said, there are leaves that are going to direct the water away from the center of the plant. That's one of the jobs of leaves, and it's so that the plant doesn't rot. You have to get under those leaves or between those leaves.
And again, they're using that rosette sprayer.
Yes.
That multi-hole contraption that emulates a shower, a gentle shower.
Yes.
That's the key.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the video, he counts how long he's over each plant. He does a bunch of plants and he just counts to 3, and a bunch that he counts to 6, and a bunch that he counts to 9. For example, don't remember the exact numbers. And then he unpots them. He lets them sit so the water will go in. You water, and you want to fill the head space, which is the space between the media and the top of the container. And in most cases, that's enough water to wet the whole column of soil in the container, and you want some to come out the bottom. So after he does his timed thing, his counting thing, he unpots the plants. And of course, the ones done with just the count of 3 were not wet all the way through. He picks the counting. And so then he knows that he has to do 6 or 9 counts over each plant. And you just walk around and you count and you make sure. Now, we didn't do those experiments when I worked at a nursery. I just walked from plant to plant and made sure that the whole headspace was full of water before I moved on to the next plant. And then I'd watch to see that some came out the bottom. The some coming out the bottom can be a false positive, so to speak, because if the plant has been allowed to dry out too much, the media has shrunk and the water will take the easiest way, which is around the shrunken media and out the bottom holes. In that case, then you need to water from the bottom. Like we talked about seedlings, put them in some kind of a container that doesn't drain, fill it with water, and allow the plant to suck it up from the bottom and rehydrate.
This conversation would also apply then to your plants in decorative containers.
Yes.
That you have scattered throughout the house, or even your house plants, or
yes,
you would take them to the sink and water them. I mean, I've gotten into the habit of taking my little house plants and sticking them in a Tupperware container that's about 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, and maybe 6 to 8 inches tall, and just putting an inch or so of water in the bottom and setting the plants in there and go do something else and come back and take them out later and then rinse them out again.
Yeah. Yeah. When you water from the bottom, if there's a lot of fertilizer in the media, it will come to the top and you'll start to see a white crust on the top. And that's an indication you need to flush this media with fresh water, allow it to drain out the bottom, and you don't want the plant sitting in that water. I have 40 or more houseplants, so I don't take them away from where they're settled and to the kitchen, but I make sure everyone has a little saucer underneath. I have a
catch basin.
And I water them and check that some water has come out into the bottom. And then if too much has come out, I get rid of it. Those catch basins have sort of a little raised surface. Right. If it's above the raised surface, I will dump out the water. If it's not, I'll just let it sit there and create humidity.
What some people do as well is put a layer of gravel on the bottom of those catch basins.
Yes.
To keep the bottom of the pot away from the bottom of that catch basin.
So it's not sitting in the water, because if it sits in water, you're going to rot roots. Say that 3 times fast.
No, I won't. No. This is a good lesson, too, for watering containers, as far as when you mentioned that when water comes out immediately, you probably have a problem.
Yes.
And the opposite is true, too. You can be standing there and watering that container and counting to 100 or whatever. And if water isn't coming out, you've got another problem.
Yes. I have some plants on my front porch in large decorative containers, and I sometimes forget which ones don't drain. So the latter happens. I'm watering, and I'm thinking, why isn't there any water coming out going across my porch? It's because decorative pot has no drain holes. The grow pot does, but the water's going through the grow pot into the decorative pot and building up around the plant. So then I have to haul the plant out of the pot, dump the water out of the decorative pot and put it back together again.
But that solves a couple of problems. A lot of people will set those plants on soil in the original container.
Mm-hmm.
And the roots will tend to grow out
Yes.
of those holes.
You'll never get it out of the ground.
You'll never get it out of the ground, or you're going to drown the plant because there's no way for the water to escape.
Right.
And by putting a container around that container, you're giving it sort of a demilitarized zone to avoid that problem happening.
Right.
And it's easier to be able to take the inside pot out and then dump out the water on the outside pot.
Yes.
So that works. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Moving up in the world, you've got a lawn.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't.
I sort of do.
Do you?
Well, I have that lumpy lawn.
Oh, you have the lumpy lawn. That's right. The
no-mow.
Oh, yeah, the no-mow, the mow-free.
Mow-free.
Yeah, the mow-free lawn. I've got a Heinz lawn. It's
Hind?
Heinz. 57 varietals.
Oh, okay.
Of decorative weeds.
Okay.
Out there that I can keep green in the springtime. It's nice. The newer heads, especially the ones made by Hunter, are called MP rotators, and they send out little fingers of water. You're using less water at a time, so there's less waste and less chance of runoff, especially if you have that lawn on a slope, as opposed to the old impulse sprinklers that put out a ton of water, or even the old spray sprinklers that also put out a lot of water at one time. And I think the key, though, is to turn off that water as soon as you start seeing it run down the hill,
right,
off the lawn.
Surge irrigation is a name they give that kind of watering, where you water until you see runoff and you keep track of how long that was. Let's say it was 5 minutes. Then you turn it off for that same amount of time, 5 minutes, and then you turn it back on again until you see runoff again. Ideally, you've set a container, like a bunch of cans, whatever you're watering, and you're trying to get an inch of water. And so you see how long it takes to get that actual inch.
I have a report on that I will post in today's show notes on how to measure the water from your lawn sprinklers.
An inch a week is a good number for, I want to say, average temperatures. Is there such a thing? Yeah. Comfortable human outdoor temperatures. When it gets really, really hot, you're going to need a little more. And when it's cooler, you're wearing a jacket, you need less.
Thank you for that. That's right. There are many forms of drip irrigation, and probably the least expensive is drip tape, which can be effective and efficient to irrigate crops. If you're a farmer, by reducing water usage, they can use up to 50% less water than traditional irrigation methods. However, because they're so cheap and thin, they need to be secured to the ground because they're going to blow all over the place. Little animals like to chew holes in them to go after the water, and they generally only last about a year, and you have to monitor them to look for those breaks while you're using them. So drip tape, I'm not fond of that for the backyard gardener.
But any of these soaker hoses, whether it's the ones with the slits in it or the round ones that, so to speak, weep, more water comes out in the low spot than the high spot. So they're only effective if used in a very flat garden.
I would go with something more sturdy, especially the inline drip emitter tubing, the 1/2 inch.
Yes. I use the 1/4 inch.
Flow. Well, okay, and there are limits to how long those runs can be. That's
10 feet.
10 feet, or it depends on the GPH, gallons per hour, that the emitters on. I did supply line, a 1/2 inch supply line all the way around a basically rectangular, not around 3 sides of a basically rectangular bed, and attached my 1/4 inch they had emitters in them every foot. So every foot I put a new line and came out of that one side of the supply line out 10 feet. Then I had to provide another supply line, and I attached them at both ends. So I basically had a ladder of irrigation lines all the way across the bed. Okay, so it looked like a ladder. Okay, I was thinking it looked like a tic-tac-toe grid.
No, you don't have to cross them like that. Okay. I've seen people do that and talk about that, but you don't have to do that. Because there's an emitter every foot, you don't have to cross them going like a tic-tac-toe board.
So you're just basically laying out parallel lines.
Yep.
And the key, though, with either 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch drip irrigation tubing, the water that's emitted is going to go straight down in most soils, especially if it's a raised bed. You're only going to get a footprint, maybe 8 inches wide if it's a gallon per hour emitters, less than that if they're 1/2 gallon hour emitters. If you have a heavier clay soil, yeah, it'll be a bit wider. But again, if it's in a raised bed, it's going to be very narrow.
Right. So in my raised bed, I use micro sprays.
Good idea.
And you want head-to-head coverage. So I have them in the corners. I have them down the side. And then I have a row down the middle.
But micro sprayers and drip emitters don't play well together.
Right. That irrigation with the micro sprayers is on its own valve.
Right. Okay. Because when you start mixing, if you decide to put on a micro sprayer on a line that already has emitters built into it, into those pressure compensating turbulent flow emitters, into the tubing, say halfway between where those two built-in emitters are, you decide, I'll put a 1/4-inch tube in here and run a micro sprayer around this plant. Chances are there isn't enough pressure to run it all because that micro sprayer has no pressure compensation to it.
It's just like the end of an open hose almost.
Yeah. Probably would work best on the end of a drip line.
Yes.
Although some people connect their drip lines so they form a big circle and keep the water going round and round. But yeah, separate lines are better.
Something I've seen, there's something called an Oya, O-L-L-A.
Oh, yeah.
Which is made of like red clay pots are. And you dig a hole and bury it and put water in it. And the water oozes out slowly. And now there's that last one. Kits, I've just noticed, and maybe I'm just behind the times, but noticed them this year for the first time. They look almost like water bottles.
Yeah.
And they connect at the top to, I believe it's drip line, and you bury them. So they're buried 6 inches. Somehow they get filled with water in these kits, and then they ooze water out. And I've considered that not for my whole raised bed. I think the raised bed is too big, but maybe for a container like a half wine barrel kind of container. Like you say, it matters what kind of soil, what texture soil you have, how much of the soil is going to get wet by these Oyas. So I'm not very knowledgeable about them. I'm very curious about them.
And again, it's spelled O-L-L-A. Even though you're being fancy and saying Oya.
Oya.
Oya. Okay. Park Seed says this about the Oya. An Oya is basically a low-fired clay vessel with a narrow neck. The pot is buried in the ground with only the neck protruding above the soil. Then crops are planted around the perimeter of the Oya at a distance based on the size of the Oya and the types of plants being grown. The Oya is then filled with water, and a cover is placed on the top to prevent soil and other debris from entering the Oya and to minimize evaporation of the water from the jar. How does the water get out of this clay pot?
It just oozes.
It just oozes.
Right.
All right. Is it a thin pot?
No, I don't think they're particularly thin. I have bigger ones, and they're as thick as a ceramic grow pot.
All right. It says, ideally, the gardener should only have to refill the Oya with water anywhere from once a day to once a week. Oyas should be refilled when the water reaches the 50% mark. As the soil becomes moist, the plant surrounding the Oya will grow towards the water source. In fact, many gardeners report that their Oya is covered with a thick mat of roots by the end of the season.
That refill part is that makes it complicated. Oyas I already own are much bigger than that, and they have a very narrow neck, and they don't have a lid on the top. And I haven't used them as much as I thought I might because I have to dig such a big hole to put them in the ground. I went away for a week after having planted some plants into the ground, and you can't just walk away from a newly planted plant. And I didn't want to turn on my whole irrigation system because the soil was pretty wet. We're having quite a bit of rain. But what needs to be watered regularly is the media that those plants were in when I bought them. So I went to my local nursery and it's like an Oya in that it's made from ceramic material, like an untreated clay pot, but it fits on the end of a bottle, a soda bottle, a wine bottle. So you put this, it's pointed like a carrot, shaped like a big fat carrot with a point, and you stick it in the ground. So I put it right next to
point down,
right next to the media my new plants came in. And then I filled bottles with water, turned them upside down, and put it in. My whole goal was just so they don't die while I'm gone. Because if you don't wet that media they came in, they will die. The roots have not yet gotten into the field soil.
How big were these bottles that you put on top? Like 16-ounce drinking water
Two of
bottles?
them were wine bottles.
Wine bottles.
And one was
Should have thought of that.
I had to ask my husband for the wine. Do we have any? He said, look at recycling. And then one was a big drinking water bottle, not 16. It's probably 2 quarts.
So how big was this thing you stuck in the ground?
It was about 6 inches long.
Yeah.
And it came in a pack of 6 or something.
Couldn't hold much water. So most of the water remained in the bottle.
Yes, right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
Which was interesting. I was concerned with how much water, how effective. I hadn't used these before. How effective would they be? But I was pleased with the results, and I may continue to use this as a way to establish a new plant into the ground.
I'm reading from the Park Seed site about the Oya, O-L-L-A, and they go into high school biology here. Understand how osmosis works. Oyas work through a process of osmosis. Osmosis in biology is the movement of water molecules through a membrane from a high concentration of water molecules to a low concentration of water molecules. This will be on the final. Take notes. Think of the Oya vessel, which is composed of porous clay, as the membrane. The water in the Oya is a high concentration of water molecules. The soil surrounding the Oya has a low concentration of water molecules. The process of osmosis wants the water molecules to be equal on both sides of the membrane and will move the water from the high concentration, which is inside the jar, to the low concentration, which is in the soil. Osmosis theoretically will continue until the concentration is equal on both sides. The beauty of this system is if it rains, the amount of water molecules on the soil side of the jar is higher, so osmosis will slow or even stop until the soil starts to dry out, and then osmosis will begin again. That means it is impossible to overwater or waste water. It just seems to me, for a garden bed, you'd need a heck of a lot of Oyas.
Right. That's why I'd like to experiment with them in
Drink more wine.
in half wine barrels and grow something there and see what happens. See if that's enough. If 1 Oya is enough, I'm thinking 3 maybe.
Yeah. Boy, I got to consider a half barrel like you would a raised bed. It's going to be a narrow column of water that exudes, if you will,
right,
from the Oya into the soil. I think 4.
You think all 4? Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I don't know. Try it. Experiment.
Right.
Yes. Send us some Oyas, Park. All right.
Yeah, we'll try it.
Yeah. We'll see how well they work. All right. That's interesting. That's okay. So this technology, if you will, goes back to...
Oh, it's ancient.
Ancient, yes. First used in northern Africa as long as 4,000 years ago. So there's that. All right. So is it a special clay?
Well, they said when they talked about it, something about how it was fired. You read it, but
Good for me. A low-fired clay vessel with a narrow neck, but it doesn't...
I don't understand clay enough to know what low-fired means.
Yeah, I don't know either.
If I do try it, I'll put it in the ground, put water in it, I'm looking at putting it in raised bed type conditions and then use a moisture meter to try to find where this water is going. How far away from the Oya is it going?
Again, that depends on the soil.
It does.
Yeah. So if you have a heavy clay soil, that could be 18 inches.
All right.
If it's a raised bed, I'll go with 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. Let me know how that works out for you.
All righty.
All right. Oyas. All right. So we've covered watering seeds, watering young plants in containers, watering mature plants in containers, sprinklers versus drip, in-ground versus raised bed and containers. And then there's good old rain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why if you have an automatic irrigation system, hopefully it's more modern and will turn off when it rains, as opposed to the old ones where you have to go manually turn it off when it rains. So we're coming to that day, and it's going to happen probably sooner and later, where there will be soil moisture meters that will be inexpensive enough and common enough that we will be able to water our entire landscapes by a machine, by a robot who will be getting the data from all these sensors in the soil.
Right. When it rains, you were saying, and then there's rain.
Yeah.
When it rains, we get a nitrogen fertilizer event.
Oh, yeah.
Because nitrogen exists primarily on Earth as a gas in the air. It's the number one component of air. And in order for it to be used by a plant, it has to be what's called fixed. And fixed means just that the nitrogen has bonded with an oxygen or a hydrogen.
NHO2.
Yeah.
No way, that's ammonia.
NO2 or NO3, nitrate, ammonium, NH4 plus, I think. That happens when there's combustion. In nature, before humans had cars that do combustion or power plants that do combustion, it was lightning primarily that does combustion. But that just leaves molecules of fixed nitrogen floating around in the air. They're not heavy enough to fall to the earth. Then rain comes, and rain washes that fixed nitrogen to the earth, and that is what plants can use to fertilize themselves. So when I lived in Nevada, of course, everybody had to irrigate because we only got 6 inches of rain a year. If you wanted anything to live, you had to irrigate, and things would look okay. And then we'd get a rainstorm, and things would look beautiful and lush and green because of this obviously generalized water, but also generalized nitrogen event.
And it wasn't because of a lightning storm. It was a rainstorm.
So a rainstorm is washing the fixed nitrogen back to the earth.
Okay. I always thought lightning had to be involved for that nitrogen increase.
Lightning does fix the nitrogen, but so does running your car. And so does running any kind of combustion will fix nitrogen.
Okay. You have a lot of GM stock, apparently. Talking about internal combustion engines here. All right. Find the system for watering that is most comfortable with you, that does the best job, and stick with it.
And visit your plants. Whatever system of watering you use, go visit your plants.
If you have an automatic watering system, especially if you have drip irrigation connected to that automatic watering system, you need to get out there and run the system manually. Look for leaks, look for breaks, look for clogs. It won't fix itself.
Right. And look for plants in distress. That might lead you to the problem with your irrigation.
But by then it might be too late.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
What a sad note to end on. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome, friend.
Gardeners are saying very nice things about the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. Tessie writes in to say, I'm going to try your coffee filter germination trick to get the pepper seeds to sprout sooner. Thank you for this very helpful information in your newsletter. Laura writes in and says, you and America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower, have made me a better and happier gardener with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. Tanya says, I subscribed immediately when I read your newsletter about the benefits of not pruning tomatoes. I don't do it, nor do two of my favorite French market gardeners, one of whom is a 6th-generation gardener in a long line of successful market farmers. Thank you. And Robin says, I work the help desk for my County Master Gardener program, and I find I'm sometimes overwhelmed by garden problems, disease, confusion, too much or not enough water, gophers. And I love the idea in one of your recent newsletters of keeping a gratitude journal based on daily walks in the garden. Thank you. The Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter comes out twice a week. The Friday edition is free for all subscribers. The Monday edition is available for paid subscribers. And by the way, your paid subscription to the newsletter supports not only the ongoing efforts to produce the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, it also helps to keep this podcast freely available each week. Find a link to more information about the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter in today's show notes, or at our homepage, gardenbasics.net, or you could just do an internet search for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. And thank you for your support and encouragement to keep the good gardening conversation going. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Friday. Garden Basics is available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, as well as an accurate transcript of the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net. And thank you so much for listening and your support.